Hi, I'm back. I wanted to follow up on the two videos that I made the other day. They had a couple different topics on them. I want to elaborate a little bit on my CDL school. In the Dan Rather report, they talked about my CDL school with regards to the training on the training course with the trucks. They didn't really get into the classroom time, which was a different experience, like I mentioned in the first YouTube that I made called Trucking 101, I believe, part 1. Once we went to the course, it was a different story. There was nobody to help us. There was nobody to help us learn very well. There was a guy that took us around the block and he tried to help us shift, and he was kind of a character. But with regards to the course, we had difficulties. Nobody advised us. They just pretty much turned us loose and said, see you later, we'll pick you up at 7. And we made a little system amongst ourselves to teach ourselves. One of the guys that was in my class was a former airline pilot who was being forced to retire. Me and him put together a little system to help each other out, to learn how to do our inspections and to teach ourselves, basically. I didn't stay in contact with him. I wish that I would have. I'm pretty confident to say of the 30 people that were in my CDL class, that went down to about maybe 8 that actually made it to the course, and to those of us who ended up going to a training carrier, I'm pretty confident to say that 3 years later, I am probably the only one that's actually still driving a truck for a variety of reasons. Not because they couldn't drive, but because they were tired of the bull. They had accidents while they were students that made them never be able to drive again. They were told misinformation about the pay and about trucking. Or they got themselves into a bad lease program and ended up not being able to stay in trucking. So there's a variety of reasons why people don't survive this industry. One of the things that happened while I was at CDL school is they brought in a whole new crew of salespeople, which I saw. These are not people that are in trucking. And that's one of the first things that you need to know about this business too. They hire salespeople, not truckers, to sell you trucking. They hire salespeople, people that are trying to close a deal to recruit. They don't know how to truck. One of the first things when somebody starts talking to you about trucking that you need to say is, how long have you been driving? And you're going to find that they're going to say, oh, I don't drive. I never drove. You don't have to drive a truck to know how to drive a truck. So it's, you're going to find a lot of people like that in the industry. There's a lot of people in the trucking industry that don't know how to drive a truck, nor would they or could they drive a truck. And if they could drive it, they would not be able to withstand the lifestyle that it requires to live in a truck. How long have they been driving to see if it's going to be relevant to your situation? The next thing that you need to find out is, are they a veteran driver? Are they an owner-operator? How did they learn how to drive the truck? There are some people that have been driving the truck for a long time, but they learned to drive from their father, their brother, their husband, maybe their mother. But you can't learn to drive a truck like that anymore. You must be fed into one of these government-run programs. And that's why they've kind of got a monopoly or an oligopoly on it. You must be fed into this system. And this problem is in the system. So even if you meet somebody that knows how to, like they say, has backed up more miles than I've driven forward, have they gone through one of today's training carriers to learn how to drive a truck? And that's going to make a big, huge difference, because a lot of veteran drivers are not aware of what is happening in the training carriers. They've heard stories, but they don't know the depth of the problem. They know that the students are affecting their business, but they're not exactly sure the brevity of it. They know that there has been a false driver shortage to run owner-operators out of business for a long time, but they don't know how complex it has become. One term that I learned a little bit halfway through my student was the term cheap freight. I did not know what cheap freight meant, but it means who's going to run the load cheaper. And who do you think that is? A big, huge carrier that has student labor, or an owner-operator who has to pay his own insurance, his own fuel, his own repairs, his own truck payment, his own fuel taxes. So then you get into the whole freight part of it, the middlemen, the brokers of the load. There's a lot of middlemen. So these are some of the things that you need to know before you get into this business. What they say you're going to make, you're probably not going to make. If you have a lot of overhead, you're probably going to have some real problems in the first couple years to survive in this business. If you get yourself into a lease owner-operator training situation, you are going to be an indentured servant. And if you don't know what that means, I suggest you look it up in a dictionary. I wrote a post called Truck Driver Shortage on my blog, truckerdesiree.com, and I used the Disney movie Pinocchio to describe what I'm seeing out here. I'm a totally different situation, like I said before. The way that I had to do trucking as a team and as a student, I don't have to do that anymore because I'm on a dedicated account, and I'll tell you about the differences in a little while. But I wrote this post, Truck Driver Shortage, because I saw a lot of similarities when you think about Pinocchio, and he's supposed to go to school, and he didn't listen to his father, and he met Honest John and Gideon, and they said, oh, you should come with me, because, you know, you could be a star, and you could do this, and you could do that, and Pinocchio just said, oh, well, that just sounds so fun, I'm gonna go, and so he went. And, you know, a little bit later in the story, besides the other troubles that Pinocchio had, was that he ended up meeting Lampwick. Lampwick just seemed like he knew all about everything. He was so worldly. Well, the next thing you know, Pinocchio and Lampwick go to Pleasure Island. Everything they wanted. Carnival rides, pool tables, all the food they could eat, smoke cigars, and then they turned into jackasses. Not all at once, a little bit at a time. And the last part of turning into a jackass was them not being able to talk, where they just went hee-haw like a little donkey. And they ended up seeing that the other little boys were getting shipped off to the salt mines. And they saw these little donkeys in the cages going to the salt mines, but they still spoke like little boys, and they were going, Mommy, please help me. And that's when Pinocchio realized he needed to get out of there with his long tail and his long ears. And remember, Lampwick was the one that was telling Pinocchio, No, I know everything. Follow me, follow me. Well, guess who was the first one to turn into a jackass? Lampwick. When you read the story, the original story of the description of Pleasure Island, which is on Wikipedia, and I put the links in the story I wrote, Truck Driver Shortage, and you start seeing some of the recruiting ads that they do and the recruiting tactics that they do to get you into trucking, and you hear some of the stories of people's lives who were destroyed by this industry from misleading recruiting and misleading ads, you start going, oh my God. In the second follow-up show to Queen of the Road, we did a show called Truck Talk, and Oida came to that show, and there was a man there who wrote a book called Sweatshops on Wheels. Sweatshops on Wheels, okay? Way before I came along, he wrote that book. So this has been going on for a really long time. Now, I can live in a sweatshop on wheels. I don't have anybody waiting for me at home. But if you have somebody waiting for you at home, and you have a house payment, and you have a car payment, and you have a family, you are going to be in a heap of trouble if you get yourself into this industry and think that you're going to Pleasure Island. What made it even more sickening for me when I saw the correlation of that to this was this woman made a joke about it when I was at the GATS show in Dallas. That was when I was followed by filmmaker Beverly Peterson for the Bully in the Workplace documentary. It's called No, There Ought to Be a Law. There's links on it all over. You can Google it by finding it's Google raw sound bites from a trucking convention. The remarks made by that woman made me realize there's a lot of people that don't care what they do to these drivers. Come on down to Pleasure Island. Sign up. It's going to be a big party. It's not a big party. That was pretty discouraging to me to know that women will throw other women under the bus